So how do you build a dynasty that lasts for more than 200 years? Well, it's not just about armies and conquests, it's about smart politics, and it's about having a vision for a totally new kind of society. Today, we're going to dive deep into the incredible story of the Shah Mir dynasty. We'll look at how it rose from the ashes of a completely collapsed kingdom, how it created a true golden age in Kashmir, and, ultimately, how it all came crashing down.
A blessing. I mean, just think about that word for a second. When historians look back at the beginning of the Shah Mir dynasty, that's the word that keeps popping up. It really makes you stop and wonder, right? What on earth was going on before that made a brand new, untested rule feel like such a massive relief?
And that, right there, is the real question, isn't it? I mean, anybody can seize power, but to build institutions that last, to win over a population with totally different beliefs, and to create a legacy that people are still talking about centuries later, that takes something special. So, how did they pull it off?
Okay, so to understand the rise of the Sultanate, we first have to understand the chaos that came before it. Before Shah Mir, Kashmir was, to put it mildly, in a really bad way.
The situation was just dire. The old rulers were seen as completely oppressive, hitting people with random, crippling taxes. The whole area was politically unstable, a total mess. And then came the final blow, a catastrophic Mongol invasion in 1320 that just shattered whatever order was left. The king actually fled, leaving absolutely no one in charge. The people were desperate for a leader, anyone, who could give them just one thing, a little bit of stability. And that desperation, well, it created the perfect opportunity.
And into this power vacuum steps a man named Shah Mir. But here's the thing, he wasn't just a warrior. He was a brilliant political strategist who had a very clear plan.
In 1339, Shah Mir makes his move. After a pretty decisive showdown, he takes over from the ruling queen, Kota Rani, and declares himself the new sultan, the founder of a new dynasty. But you know, grabbing the throne, that was just step one. The real challenge, the hard part, was earning the right to actually keep it.
And this, right here, was Shah Mir's masterstroke. He didn't just talk about change, he made it happen, like, immediately. First, he got rid of those hated random taxes and capped land revenue at a predictable 1/6 of the harvest. Huge. Then, he set up a justice system that was fair to everyone, Hindu and Muslim alike. He built trust by marrying into prominent local families, and he brought new converts into his government. See, he gave people real, tangible reasons to back him. This wasn't just a conquest. It was a whole new deal for everyone.
So with that solid foundation now in place, the next generation was ready to think bigger. And Sultan Shahabuddin was the guy who had turned this stable little kingdom into a regional powerhouse.
Shahabuddin was all about expansion. He took the secure kingdom his predecessor had built and just pushed its borders outward. We're talking about armies marching all the way to Kabul. But he wasn't just a conqueror, he was also a clever diplomat. By signing a peace treaty with the super-powerful Delhi Sultanate to his south, he basically secured his backyard. That move gave him the breathing room he needed to really consolidate his gains and forge a true empire.
Of course, history is never a simple, straight line of progress. The dynasty story took a really sharp, really controversial turn with the next guy, Sultan Sikandar, a ruler who earned a very different kind of reputation.
Sikandar's reign is this huge puzzle. On the one hand, his policies towards his Hindu subjects were incredibly harsh. He destroyed temples, burned sacred texts, and forced conversions, which is how he got the nickname Idol Destroyer. But, and this is a big but, at the very same time, he was a massive builder. He's the one who commissioned huge projects like the famous Jama Masjid in Srinagar. It's a wild paradox, right? While he was tearing down one set of cultural symbols, he was building massive new ones to stamp the Sultanate's Islamic identity onto the landscape.
And then, after the chaos of Sikandar's reign, came the absolute peak of the dynasty under his son, Sultan Zainul Abidin. He was known affectionately as Bud Shah, which means the Great Sultan. His 50-year rule was a true golden age, but it also held the very seeds of its own downfall.
Bud Shaw's incredible success really came down to three things that all worked together. He created massive economic prosperity, and that money funded an explosion of culture and art. But none of it would have been possible without his third pillar, a radical policy of religious tolerance.
He essentially turned Kashmir into what you could call an industrial garden. He actively went out and invited artisans from Persia and Central Asia to come and teach their skills. This is where those legendary Kashmiri crafts really take off. We're talking papier-mâché, those incredible woven shawls, bookbinding. This wasn't just about making pretty things. This was a state-sponsored economic revolution.
And the foundation for all that prosperity was his policy on religion. He completely flipped his father's harsh policies on their head. He got rid of the jizya tax on non-Muslims. He personally invited Hindu families who had fled to come back home. He even said that anyone who had been forcibly converted to Islam could return to Hinduism if they wanted. This created a level of social harmony that let his economic and cultural plans truly blossom.
So, let's do a quick recap of the guys who built this thing. You have Shamir, the founder, who brought stability out of chaos with smart, popular reforms. Then you have Shahabuddin, the conqueror, who turned it into an empire. And finally, Zainul Abidin, the great sultan, who brought about its golden age. Pretty incredible progression, but as we all know, even the greatest empires can fall.
So what went wrong? I mean, how did a dynasty that was built on such strong pillars end up just crumbling? Well, as it so often does, the answer lies within.
Okay, so there was this key structural flaw in the system, and it was called the Jagirdari system. Basically, the Sultan gave big chunks of land to his nobles, and in return, they promised to provide him with soldiers. Now, this works just fine when you have a strong ruler calling the shots. But under a weak one, the nobles basically become mini-kings in their own right. They keep the money for themselves and build private armies that are loyal only to them. It completely hollowed out the state from the inside.
And here's the tragic timeline of the collapse. The Golden Age ends with a thud in 1470. For all his greatness, Zainul Abidin's biggest failure was dying without a clear heir. This mistake kicked off 50 years of brutal civil war that just wrecked the state. The corrupt nobles with their private armies took over, and all that internal fighting was like a giant welcome sign to outsiders. Finally, in 1586, the Mughal Empire basically just walked in and put the Shamir dynasty out of its misery.
But here's the thing. Even though the dynasty itself fell, the 2 centuries that it ruled left a permanent mark on Kashmir.
The Kashmir Sultans are the ones who truly formalized Islamic rule in the region, leaving behind new systems of law and government. They're the ones who sparked the incredible artistic traditions that Kashmir is still famous for. But maybe, just maybe, their most important legacy was fostering that unique cultural identity known as Kashmiriyat, a blending of traditions that would define the region for hundreds of years.
Which leaves us with one last big question to think about. That golden age under Zainul Abidin created this amazing society that was prosperous and tolerant. But it was all brought down by one single institutional failure, not having a clear plan for succession. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How fragile is any golden age? Can a culture, no matter how tolerant or vibrant, actually survive when the political systems designed to protect it fail?